Something has shifted. You're not sure when it happened exactly, but something was unblocked, and you're not quite sure what to do with that. Because the last time you trusted what you were feeling, it cost you. So you're moving carefully, testing the ice before you put your weight on it. And somewhere underneath the relief, there is still that question. How do I know this is real? Hi, and welcome back to God is My Guru. After going through spiritual abuse, the question that stays with you is rarely theological, but a deeper one. How do I know I can trust what I'm feeling? How do I know it's going to hold? How do I actually learn to trust again at all? It is the most honest thing a person can ask after what you've been through. I felt like this once too. And then the most unlikely story in the Bible answered it. And it changed how I understood everything about trust. And it was actually about Abraham. Did you know he was roughly 85 years old when the story happens in the Bible? And he had left everything, his country, his family, and the life he understood, on the strength of a promise of a voice he could not prove to anyone else. 10 years in, and the promise had not moved. Sarah was still barren. She couldn't have children. So Abraham starts asking, where is that promise? God takes him outside and he says, look up. Count the stars if you can. That is how numerous your descendants will be. And Abraham asks one of the most honest questions, how can I know? For Abraham, being shown the stars weren't enough. You know that feeling. But the answer that God gave him is strange. God tells Abraham, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And after waiting 10 years for an answer, Abraham asks no more questions, but brings what God asked for. And it gets even stranger. The 3 larger animals are cut in two and laid opposite each other on the ground. The birds are not divided. And then he waits. The sun is still up. Nothing happens. Birds of prey come down toward the carcasses. Abraham drives them away. He keeps waiting. The sun moves across the sky, but he keeps waiting. Have you ever done everything that was asked of you? Prepared everything, shown up, done it right, and then stood in the silence wondering if anyone was actually coming? That's where we find Abraham, standing over the pieces he prepared, driving away the birds, watching the sun move, still waiting. And then the sun sets, and something unexpected happens. A deep sleep falls over Abraham, something heavier than rest. Darkness, and in the darkness, dread. A dread so thick that the text in the Bible names it. As if the weight of everything he cannot control settles onto him all at once, and he goes under. He is asleep. He's not watching, not present, not holding it together, and he's not monitoring whether it's going right. He has no grip of any of it. Now, you might find this as strange as I did, but in those days in Abraham's world, and this matters, when 2 people entered into a covenant or a binding contract, they would create a ceremony where both of the 2 parties would walk between the divided animals. The message was unmistakable. May what happened to these animals happen to me if I break this promise. That's how serious a contract was in those days. Both parties carried the weight, carried the risk, and both parties walked through the pieces. That was how it worked, every time. Abraham doesn't walk through the pieces. He's asleep. He contributes nothing to this moment. No oath, no negotiation, no performance, no signature, no grip. He is completely, entirely not in control of what happens next. And while he sleeps, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch pass between the pieces. God's presence, moving through the covenant alone, taking the full weight of it, both sides, alone. The man who asked, how can I know, wakes up to find the promise already sealed. Not because of anything he did, Not because his faith was strong enough, not because he performed the contract correctly. He was asleep, and it was done. You have done the work of learning to trust your signal again. But there is a difference between recovering your signal and being required to trust completely before the evidence had time to accumulate. The trust was never yours to manufacture. Everything most people were taught about faith runs the opposite direction. They were taught, you trust first, then God responds. They were taught, your belief is what activates the promise. And they were taught, doubt is the obstacle. Remove it and things will move. Which basically means that if things aren't moving, the problem is you. Your doubt, your weakness, your insufficient faith. You are what needs to change. You are what needs to have enough faith, enough trust. But the story in Genesis 15 says something completely different. Abraham asks, how can I know? And God doesn't fix Abraham's faith. God demonstrates his own trustworthiness. The burden of proof is placed on God, not on Abraham. Abraham is not required to manufacture certainty he doesn't have. He is shown who is carrying the promise. Trust doesn't begin when someone demands it. Trust begins when someone proves they deserve it. There is something else in this story that most people miss. If we go back to the birds again, you remember when Abraham is waiting and birds of prey come down toward the pieces? And Abraham keeps driving them away. He protects something he cannot see the outcome of. Your signal did that, protecting your soul, even when you didn't know that's what it was doing. The part of you that kept saying something is wrong here, even when it was punished, even when it was told it was too sensitive, too suspicious, too faithless, even when listening to it cost you. The problem was not the signal. That signal was driving away the birds. The problem was the system that punished you for having one. But knowing that doesn't resolve your question. Why can't I just trust? That question is a trap, because it assumes the problem is your inability. It puts the burden back on you. It sounds like you have to carry it yourself, and it sounds like every voice that ever told you that the signal was the problem. Replace that question with this. What evidence do I actually have in front of me right now? Not looking back at the system, not measuring yourself against where you think you should be. Just what is in front of you. The person who said they would show up and showed up. The moment you listened to the signal and it was right. The time where you were honest and the world did not end. The small things, the repeated things, the quiet accumulation of proof. That is how trust returns. Not all at once, not through a decision, but the way the stars appear, one at a time, until you look up and the sky is full of them. And you didn't watch each one arrive, you just looked up, and there they were. Abraham woke up from that sleep a different man, not because his circumstances had changed. Sarah could still not have children. The descendants were still impossible. The wait was not over. But he had seen who was carrying the promise, and that changed what the waiting felt like. You're not responsible for making someone trustworthy. That's their job to prove. Your job is simpler. Show up and watch what they do. That's it. That's how you'll know. Trust follows evidence. You did not reject him. You were never even introduced. And now you are. I'll see you in the next episode.